to the Love of the Star podcast. I am Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. Joined as always by former Super Bowl winning NFL scout Brian Broaddus. He is now the co-host of the G-Bag Nation 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105.3 The Fan. And he is also the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys radio network. Brian, how you doing this fine Thursday?
I am doing well, Robert. Thank you very much for asking. A beautiful day here in Dallas and playing meaningful football. That's all I can ask.
It is meaningful football because you've got a chance to set yourself up for a potential division title, or maybe even as much as the 1 seed. It's not likely, but it's not impossible. What we're going to be looking for this week, as we've mentioned in recent days, is you're going to look for a victory over the Commanders, a victory by the Giants over the Eagles, and then you're going to need the Cardinals to do you a favor and beat the 49ers. So probably not likely, but it's at the very least, it's possible. You could see it.
Yeah, the Cardinal one is not going to happen. I don't. I mean, they're down to basically their fourth quarterback. They're not playing their receivers. That Cardinal team is an absolute mess. And if we were having to cover that, that would be a painful exercise right now. But we're not covering the Cardinals, covering the Cowboys. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. This is the one thing that I've been real consistent about with Philadelphia is, until they win a game, you got to keep playing. You just got to keep playing. And Mike McCarthy's come out and said, hey, we're trying to win this football game. And you know what? If you actually made a coach, if you gave Mike McCarthy truth serum right now, I think he would tell you that he's happy his team is having to play a game. I understand rest and I understand health, but coaches are a different breed. Yeah. They don't know how to handle the pull back aspect of their teams. They don't, because everything is gauged on go, move, keep going, keep surviving, keep going, keep moving. And that's where I think that coaches get in a little bit of trouble. Look what's going on in Philadelphia right now. Yes, they're dealing with injuries, but they're also in a mode where they've been trying to win games. They've tried to win to clinch this thing for 3 weeks now, and it hasn't worked out for them, And maybe Philadelphia having to play this game to beat the Giants to win the division and get the number 1 seed in the big picture thing for them might be the best thing. It might be the best thing, because if you're going to sit for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and rest and manage and do all that, teams have failed at doing that. That has been a very, very difficult task. So I think if you ask Mike McCarthy right now, secretly, he would tell you he's happy his team, A, has a chance to win the division, and B, gets to keep playing.
Yeah, I think that's true. And we talked a little bit on Wednesday when we recorded about, there's still positives to playing in this game regardless of the seeding. Things like, the offensive line cohesion, the continued development of Dak and T.Y. Hilton's chemistry, Nashawn Wright getting more reps. You mentioned Damone Clark getting those reps. That this is all stuff that can absolutely help you as you head into the playoffs. And as the Cowboys head into the playoffs, we're going to take a look at a bit of a broad question, one that's a lot more positive and another that's probably a little negative, and we'll give you some Cowboys PTSD. But I want to lead off this first segment, Brian, by talking about reasons that you should feel optimistic about a Cowboys Super Bowl victory this year. The things that as they head into the playoffs are working really well for them, and the things that really will challenge some of these other contenders here in the playoffs. So for you, Brian, what is the number one area of this team that you feel really good about as they head into this playoff run?
I actually have a couple of them, but the one that I really probably appreciate the most is their ability to continue to turn teams over. They're finding ways. Maybe they're not getting off the field on third down like they once were with this pass rush. They still create turnovers. They still have that ability. And it happened at a key point in the Jacksonville game. What did they do? Curse created a key turnover to give Dallas back the ball on a fumble from Trevor Lawrence.
Yep.
When the game was on the line, what did they do? They came up with a turnover. So we've seen this team find ways to turn the opponent over. And I think that's been something that, last year it was all about their turnovers, and all the talking heads or the football pundits kept telling me you can't have back-to-back years of leading the league and getting turnovers. Can't have it. It's you have a ton of them, and then it comes back to reality. I don't think you could say that anymore about the Cowboys. They led the league in turnovers, getting turnovers last year, and they're the team right now. And so to me, I think that's something the pass rush or lack of is a concern. But the fact, even without the pass rush, they've been able to turn people over, I think says a lot about them going forward.
The turnovers have been huge for them because they were in the first half of the season. I think we were talking about, well, it's a stingier defense. It's a tighter defense than last year, but they're not quite getting the turnovers that they had last season. Now it's kind of reversed back a little bit. Now you're giving up some chunk plays, but you're an opportunistic defense that takes the ball away. The first 11 games of the season, Brian, they had 16 takeaways. The last 5 games, they have 16 takeaways. So
that's amazing.
Really ratchet it up.
It's amazing. And just think of how better they would be to the plus side if they didn't have the turnovers on offense. If you just were, if they didn't have the interceptions and things like that. So, that's the stroke of positivity for me when you look at this Dallas Cowboys team.
How do you feel about something that I think is getting a lot better, something that it looks like we've ironed out a little bit, and something that I think you can feel confident about is the communication issues between Dak and the receivers seem to have lessened than we were dealing with maybe 6 weeks ago, where it was some of this guy goes this way and the ball is going this way, and it seems like they're getting on the same page and reading things. But one of the things that I've felt like all along, and I've referenced this quote so many times here, I've referenced it on the G-Bag Nation, I've referenced it on Sean and RJ when I've been there, is what CeeDee Lamb told us way back in the summer, which is when he said, I feel like if I'm not getting going, this offense isn't getting going. And I think that what you've seen is, I feel like what we've seen here in the second half is playing out, that the Cowboys in the playoffs will go as deep as the connection between Dak and CeeDee Lamb can take them. And if that's on and clicking, they've got a really good shot. And I think that that's the encouraging thing, is right now their connection looks great. They are clicking on all cylinders in a way that we haven't seen from them in the 3 years they've played together.
Yeah. And I'd give Robert Prince some credit here for the development with these receivers. I know earlier that, with the number of targets that were going to CeeDee Lamb, and you were having some struggles with some of the connections, you had some of the interception problems and stuff. And you're right. We haven't seen that, in the last several games. But I'll give Robert Prince a lot of credit. They were looking for somebody to kind of pull this group together. And, you're still waiting on Michael Gallup, and this was a tough season for Michael Gallup. I think so. I think coming back from the knee injury and stuff, I think him and Britt Brown did a great job. But when you talk about CeeDee Lamb, it really is. It's very much like what we saw CeeDee Lamb at Oklahoma. That's what we were waiting for. That's what, on a lot of draft boards, I think that, he was the top receiver for that reason. It was the run after catch. It was CeeDee Lamb on the move. It was CeeDee Lamb finishing routes. The one thing that they've kind of figured out is, don't let him be a stationary player. Make him move. Make him have to make the defense have to adjust to where he is. And that was one of my challenges for Kellen Moore and the staff going into the season, was find ways to get CeeDee Lamb the ball when he can play on the move. And that, I think they've done a really nice job with. And like I said, I want to give Robert Prince some credit for maybe some of the influence that he might have had with Kellen Moore Doug Nussmeier and the other coaches.
I think one of the other things that you have to feel positive about is not only what Tony Pollard's been able to do in the running game this year, but the way in the second half of the season, he's really turned into a dual threat and has had a couple really big games catching the ball. So that it's one of those things where even if he's not getting going in the running game, but there's a problem there, there's still an impact that he can have catching the ball and challenging defenses that way. And he's proved to be a tough cover for them. Is that area right there, or how much more do you think that helps the offense as they head into the playoffs and makes them a challenge to cover? Is, hey, this isn't just, Tony Pollard, the runner, which is difficult enough for you guys to game plan for, but he can catch the ball in space, he can make moves, he can make you miss, and the Cowboys are willing to take advantage of that now.
Why do I feel like they've wasted 3 years of his career not playing?
Because they did.
They really did. They really did. And I know if you listen to this podcast or you listen to me on 105.3 The Fan, you've heard me say this before. Jerry Jones did not like my question about wasting his career. He did not like that at all. But the realization of what we see right now is they wasted 3 years of his availability, because you watched him come out of Memphis. You knew he could catch the football. You knew that. But what we've learned about him is as a runner. Tony Pollard is not a small guy. We all feel like that Tony Pollard is a light, slight player. He's not. And, you can hand him the ball inside. Now, do you want to hand him the ball on every 3rd and 1? No. But you want to find ways to get him involved. You want to find him the way to get him in space. And the shame of this all is, and it could be to the benefit of the Cowboys at least this year, but they did figure out you could use him in the passing game. When the running game isn't going for him, you can find a way to throw him the ball in the flat. You can throw him, if you're scrambling and he's out there by himself, you throw him the ball, and what should be a 4-yard play is an 18-yard play. That's what they figured out about Tony Pollard. And it's a shame that it took last year Zeke having to play with a bad knee in order for them to we don't want to go through that again. And once they started incorporating Tony Pollard, and Tony Pollard became the 4-minute back too, finishing games, they became a better football team. They became a better offense. And I will give the offensive coaches credit for this year, but they are 3 years behind what they could have done with this guy.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's good that they're taking advantage of it now, but it does definitely make you feel like that was a lot of wasted time before. But look, if they are able to make this click and they're able to use him as a big-time weapon into the playoffs, and it ultimately leads to a Super Bowl victory, obviously nobody's going to complain too much about that. The other aspect of this, the final one that I think is interesting to note in terms of the positive things to think about is, we've talked a lot about T.Y. Hilton, and I don't want to overreact to just 2 weeks, but it does feel a little bit now, Brian, like they've got that's your guy. If you really need to find a safety, I trust he's going to be in the right spot, run the right depth, everything else on 3rd and 7, that guy can be T.Y. Hilton. It really feels like he's got a chance to be that guy who can make the catch in overtime against Green Bay, or run the route that you need to run against Green Bay or whoever else. I think what T.Y. Hilton's adding here is really huge for their prospects heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This team was hunting a different type of player at receiver. And you look at what they did the last really 2 months of trying to recruit Odell Beckham. They knew they needed a loose play player. And that, I thought maybe that would be Turpin, but it wasn't. It wasn't Turpin. They figured out, and you're right. What opened my eyes was the 4th and 3 play at Green Bay. I'm like, who? They tried to get the ball to Pollard, but it wasn't a play. It was just a hope and a prayer. Now you see, ever since that T.Y. Hilton has been on the field, they had a vision for what they needed, whether that's T.Y. Hilton or Odell Beckham. It just so happened that T.Y. Hilton was the healthier of the two. And now they've got that guy. And I'm glad to see that when he's on the field, you throw the ball his direction, good things happen. We've seen that in a short body of work. T.Y. Hilton, throw him the ball, first downs happen. And I kind of feel like, though, that we're going to continue to see more of T.Y. Hilton. You know, T.Y. Hilton needs to be in all the 11 personnel stuff. You know, if they have to pull Gallup off the field on a third down just to make sure that they get a first down, by all means, do whatever you have to do to make that work. But they had a vision for what they needed. It didn't work out with Beckham. It looks like it's working out with Hilton.
Should T.Y. Hilton be the number 2 target?
I would say he's more reliable than what you have with Michael Gallup. Yes, I do. Every time I throw a ball to Michael Gallup and it's incomplete, why does it look like he's fighting the ball? Why does it look like there's bad body position? And, you know, sometimes the ball isn't where it needs to be. But I think what happens with Gallup is he fights the ball. And I don't think he's the most natural catcher of the ball. But I do know that he's capable of making big plays. We saw the game where, you know, was it Indianapolis where Dak was scrambling to his right and, you know, Gallup was standing station.
That was Philly, the one in the side of the end zone.
No, I'm talking about before that. He was standing stationary in the middle of the field. Dak sprints to his right. That's a play too. But even before that, he's standing stationary in the middle of the field waiting for the ball, and all of a sudden he takes off running, you know, running parallel with Dak, and Dak hits him, and then he goes into the end zone. I believe that was the Colts game. But
yeah,
that's the kind of player you're capable of having. You know, I think if you gave Dak truth serum, by the way, again, here I'm using truth serum again. But I think that he was telling you that pass he caught in Philly was probably going to Tony Pollard in the back of the end zone. The ball happened to, you know, just right there was Gallup to make the play. But Gallup, that's what Gallup's capable of. Not a lot of area, catch the football, get both toes down, and make a play. But right now, he fights the ball a little bit, and T.Y. Hilton doesn't fight the ball.
Obviously, the route concepts matter and everything else. But last question here for you. I'm just curious. I'm going to run a pretend scenario for you, Brian. 4th and 6. Okay, let's say we're driving for a go-ahead score late in the game. It's 4th and 6. You're at the opponent's 40, and you've got to pick up a first down. Similar to the Detroit game, Detroit playoff game in 2014. Same sort of scenario. You are out there in 11 personnel. Okay, it is Dalton Schultz, Lamb, Gallup, Hilton, Pollard in the backfield.
Right.
What is the ideal order of progression for you of those 5 targets?
I would throw the ball. I would go Lamb first, Schultz second, T.Y. Hilton third.
And then whoever's
Pollard. Pollard.
Gallup would be the last of that progression for you at this moment.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
Man, that's, and I don't disagree with you, but it's wild to think where we've come from. You know, not that they broke the bank for him, but I mean, this is a guy they just gave a 5-year, $62 million contract to.
And you know what? Next year he might be even better. I mean, there was clearly a lack of confidence when you talk to people. That Monday night game they had against the Giants, what was that, in week 3? You know, yes. And that's when he was supposed to come back. He mentally wasn't ready to go talking to people about that they felt better about week 4 and him being involved. So there was clearly early in this year a lack of confidence about that.
You're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, now we got to take it a little bit negative. I'm sorry, but you know, we got to deal with both sides of the coin. So what are some of the reasons for optimism that fans can feel good about the prospects of this team making a Super Bowl run? There's always the uneasiness from this fan base about a one and done early exit from the playoffs. So, Brian, as we enter this playoff run or this playoff stretch, where are the areas of this team right now that give you the most pause that say that's a concern? These are some of the things that may kill you and may cause you to be one and done.
Yeah, the big plays, the chunk plays on defense. You know, we saw how quickly Philadelphia was able to move down the field once they got the ball back in that last 2 minutes of that game.
Right.
Now, Dallas got to stop, and Philadelphia did you a favor by spiking the ball on by spiking the ball on first down and trying to save a timeout.
Cost themselves down.
They cost themselves a down. They absolutely did. So to me, I just worry about the chunk plays. And, are you going to get defensive holding? Are you going to get a pass interference? They're doing their best to stabilize what's going on at left corner. I think it's Nahshon Wright at left corner. I'm not putting Joseph back out there. I'm going to ride with, your really playoff existence is riding with a corner that's doing his very best, who just needs experience. The problem is the experience is coming in games that are going to be crucial. And that's the thing. The pass rush, if the pass rush was consistently getting home, I would say that having Nahshon Wright out there is an okay option. But teams have kind of figured out, we're going to double move you. You're not going to get your rush home, and we're going to try and find ways to pick on you. And I that's the chunk plays, the screens for 18 yards, the double move passes for 50 yards down the field, like in the Philadelphia game. Those are the things that scare me about this team going forward, because I don't know how they're going to limit the chunk plays unless they get things going again with their pass rush.
What's the best opportunity to fix the pass rush?
It's negative plays. It's negative. Yeah, it's negative plays.
Here's one of the things that I think I was listening to G-Bag Nation the other day, and I heard Eric Chiafalo ask you a similar sort of question where it's like, okay, but if they're doing something to combat your rush, what do you do to what are they giving up in that? And it's like, that's the tough thing, is the thing they're doing to combat the rush is just get the ball out quicker.
They're getting the ball out quicker.
And they're not giving up a ton there. I guess they're giving up, the development of being able to push the ball downfield. But if they hit you with that short game long enough, you do some, then you're going to be able to eventually take advantage of some of the stuff downfield. So what's the response to that? Is it just, do they need to consider more just aggressive blitzing?
Yeah, they do. The idea is to get home before you get the ball out, or at least get in the throwing lanes and go up and try and deflect balls. We saw what they did against the Titans: slot blitz, safety blitz. I think they were definitely looking at some ideas for what they're going to need to go forward. That game was a little bit of a tester game, because you have a quarterback that hasn't played a long time in the system. And we'll probably see it this weekend against the Commanders. Yeah. That with Howell at quarterback, how quickly can he read blitzes? And so if you're Dan Quinn, you could take this opportunity to look at slot blitz, safety blitz, combination safety linebacker blitz. You could have a couple of those dialed up and have those ready for, okay, this did well for us at the end of the season. Now we're going to see them in a playoff game. When the Cowboys create negative plays, and I mean negative plays, getting penalties against the offense is a negative play. If creating a holding call, creating a motion call, creating something that moves the team back. When the Cowboys get you like in 2nd and 16, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 14, 3rd like that pass rush could get home. It's tough, because it takes away a lot of the options. So maybe the screens run, but the ball's got to go down the field. And so when the ball has to go down the field, you can't throw it as quickly. So that's kind of where they're at right now. For the longer they make teams have to go to travel to get the first, that puts the ball in the quarterback's hands longer. And because those routes don't develop quickly, especially when they're downfield.
Obviously, you are giving up, some gap integrity when you're running a lot of twists and stuff like that. But that was the way that they were getting home and something that they lost. So you generally, in order to have, one thing or approach things one way, you're going to lose something, or you're going to be a little more vulnerable in one thing. So recognizing that this would be a vulnerability, we haven't seen a lot of this from Dan Quinn, but is there an argument to be made, or would you at least test out this weekend in preparation to see if this helps? Would you test out more zero? like cover zero press and just or do you just not trust your corners enough to be without that safety help and press?
Yeah, you could probably do it against Howell again this week, and he probably hasn't seen a whole heck of a lot of that. But yeah, you could test it. This quarterback can run a little bit. He could scramble. He's got the RPO game. They did it at North Carolina. I would test, because you're likely going to play Tampa, whose quarterback doesn't run at all.
Mm-hmm.
So you could test some zero blitz stuff and see how it looks covering the Commanders got 3 receivers and a tight end that can actually catch. They've got some good players. So to me, I kind of feel like, though, that if you could cover up and go zero blitz, that could help you in the long run. Now, again, you're not going to play a running quarterback with Tom Brady. There are plenty of times you can look at some film this year, and I've seen enough of Tampa's games. Cincinnati was a great example of bringing pressure on him in that game, and they couldn't handle the pressure. They couldn't get the ball out fast enough.
Yeah.
You know, they had a lot of turnovers in that game too. So I at least round 1, you're not playing against probably a threat at running quarterback. You know, well, if it's Rodgers, then I retract everything I just said, because he is going to be able to run with the football. But Tom Brady's not going to run with the football.
When you look at we're obviously putting a lot of concern on the defense specifically here right now. Where are some areas? Geez, Brian, where are some areas of the offense that concern you that you think could impact them in being a one and done? Is it more than just the turnovers, or is that just the thing you got to worry about is the turnovers?
Yeah. By the way, bless you on the sneeze.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think the turnovers are the biggest concern. I think that they're really doing a great job on third down conversions. They haven't run the ball particularly well the last 2 weeks, and they put themselves behind the chains, and they've been able to convert third downs, which I think is pretty impressive in itself. If you eliminated Dak Prescott's interceptions, we would be talking about Dak Prescott having a remarkable year at quarterback. We'd be talking about him as like, my gosh, there's nobody in the league. I mean, we've talked about, well, we don't talk about Trevor Lawrence. What happened when Trevor Lawrence started eliminating the interceptions that he had earlier in the year?
Jacksonville winning their division.
Jacksonville started winning games and the possibility of winning their division. Absolutely. See, and then we talk about, wow, look, what an incredible second half of the season for Trevor Lawrence. We could be saying the same thing about Dak Prescott. The things that make me nervous the most, 2 things: the turnovers from Dak or the offense in general, and then the continuity at right tackle and right guard in the running game. Those are concerns for me, because I don't feel it's very clean right now. They're going to have to find a way to run the football better and more consistently, and they're going to have to block the fronts better they're about to play. But I need to see better continuity between the right tackle and the right guard, those 2 Hall of Fame players over there.
When you look at, one of my concerns as we head into the playoffs is some of the stubbornness, and I know we've talked about it a little bit, but some of the stubbornness and the ineffectiveness of the early down runs. Yeah. And they've been good at throwing the ball on third down, but you're putting your team in some bad positions.
Yeah. But they're picking them up, which is fascinating.
Yes, which is great. You obviously just don't want to, necessarily bank on that continuing for forever. Do you have trust in Kellen Moore to put them in more favorable positions early on in downs?
No.
Just that easy. No. Is that a concern then for a one and done? If you're putting your team in playoff games in 3rd and 7 consistently.
Yeah, you're going to play teams that are probably better on third down defense. That's a fact. I mean, you're in the playoffs probably because your defense has done a pretty good job during the year. Whether you're a third down defense, red zone defense, create turnover defense, whatever you are. Yeah. Are the Cowboys getting away with it right now? There's 2 things they're getting away with. They're getting away with Dak's interceptions or the team's interceptions. And
some of them are definitely Dak's. Yeah.
Yeah. The team's turnovers. They're getting away with that. And they're getting away with put in bad down and distance situations and converting third downs. And you wonder if that's sustainable throughout through the playoffs. Yeah, we'll see. If they keep not being able to run the football, then But you asked me the question about Kellen Moore. I think Kellen Moore is going to be committed to running the football because I believe the head coach wants to try and run the ball, whether that's for 1 yard, 2 yards, or 3 yards. At least right now, they're more interested in trying to make it. They're sure everybody wants it 2nd and 1 or 2, but the reality of life for them right now, it's 2nd and 8 a lot of time, or it's 2nd and 9. But they played against 2 teams back to back that didn't want you to run the football. And this team you're about to play this weekend with the Commanders, they're not going to want you to run the football either.
You're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it is now time for our favorite segment of the show where we turn things over to our dear listeners for the Dean Julia Love of the Star mailbag. First question here from Mark. I know we're shorthanded on defense due to injury, but is this a big concern heading into the playoffs next week that the defense has been hit and miss at times? Yeah, I think it's absolutely a concern. Now, like you mentioned, been shorthanded. You are getting back 2 huge pieces there. For all the crap Leighton Vander Esch got from this fan base for a lot of this year, I think there's a lot of the begging for him to return at this point, because I think you see how much, as you mentioned yesterday, how much he covers over some of the sins of others and gets you a better understanding of what it is that he does. But yeah, you're going to get a big boost with Hankins and Vander Esch coming back and alleviate some of that. But yeah, absolutely. The hit and miss nature of the defense is a concern.
Yeah, it is. And Anthony Brown is another one we all like to beat up on. But I'll tell you where Vander Esch also helps you. He lines up Damone Clark. That's, it's kind of very similar. I said it in the podcast the other day. And congratulations to Darren Woodson, who is a finalist for the Hall of Fame this year. God, I hope he gets in.
Long overdue.
Long overdue. But Darren Woodson lined up Roy Williams for a lot of Roy Williams. Roy Williams will admit it. Roy Williams didn't know what the hell he was doing. It's Darren Woodson lining him up, telling him where to go, what to do, and all that. I think Leighton Vander Esch was the one guy that was kind of helping Clark along here. Now, Clark needs to learn, and Clark's picking up some stuff. But, man, I won't go into that again. But, yeah, the concerns on defense, sure, absolutely. But you're getting back. It's so funny. This team is like a full yard difference in run defense with Hankins on the field. And I wonder the same thing with Vander Esch being on the field. A lot of those guys were on the field together a lot, when that was going on. So I'm going to say that, as a fan base, you got to be careful of what you wish for sometimes.
Next question here from Garrett and Brian. I don't know if you have a pen or whatever, but you may want to get these playoff scenarios ready. I'll repeat them back to you if you need. But he said, if you had to choose a playoff run, which do you choose? You choose A, which is on the road against Tampa, on the road against San Francisco, and then on the road against Philadelphia in the NFC Championship. So that's obviously them as the 5th seed. Or do you pick B, which this scenario would be them being the 2nd seed, which would be at home against Green Bay, at home against Philly, on the road against San Francisco?
Okay.
So you don't think the differences here are
it's both. They're both difficult. They're both
Green Bay or
difficult.
Tampa, basically. Do you want Green Bay at home or Tampa on the road? You get Philly at home in B instead of on the road, and you still play San Francisco on the road, but you delay it till the NFC title.
Yeah, I think you're gonna. Me personally, I'll take the home game to start the tournament. I'll take the home. You find a way to beat Green Bay. That's a huge confidence booster right there. Then you turn around and, you got to deal with San Francisco,
Yeah, Tampa on the road, San Francisco on the road, Philly on the road.
Yeah. Give me that one. I'll take the scenario too. Because I always want a home game in the playoffs. I'm sorry. Sure. I know there's teams, the Giants. I know the Giants one year, 2007. I mean, we've seen teams win. Look what San Francisco did. Look what San Francisco had to do last year.
San Francisco was this close to getting to the Super Bowl, if not for a dropped interception by Tart.
If Tart doesn't drop that ball, they're in the Super Bowl. So yeah, give me the second scenario where I have a home game.
Yeah, how much does your confidence level just personally jump for the Cowboys? You were fond of giving us your percentages on the Odell Beckham watch, so I'm going to ask for your percentage here. What is your make?
By the way, you were right about that because you were at 5% for a lot of that. I went from 75 or 60 to 75 to 25 to 0. You threw out, and I give you a lot of credit for this. You're like, I don't ever see this happening. I don't see this happening.
I just learned not to trust. Forcing was so tough on it.
Well, once we heard what the medical prognosis was, then we all should have put 0 on it. And you did. And I give you credit for that.
I appreciate that. But the question for you on the percentages of the Super Bowl run, how much what is your percentage chance that the Cowboys make the Super Bowl if they're the 5 seed? So they got to play probably on the road the whole way.
Yeah.
Versus if they're the 1 seed, so they're at home and they get a bye. How much does your percentage chance change between those?
You're saying if they're the number 1 seed?
Yeah, so they get a bye.
Your percentage is a lot higher because you have to play 1 less game.
Would you say it's better than 50% that you'd feel better than 50% that the Cowboys make the Super Bowl if they get the number 1 seed?
Well, yeah, and I thought in 2016 they had a good shot at it too. All you had to do was beat Green Bay and Atlanta, and you were in the Super Bowl. You know, that wasn't like you had to go through Murderer's Row or anything like. Well, it ended up the Packers, are what they are. Mm-hmm. But to me, yeah, if you get a bye and you get to, you have to play 1 less game, your chances are going to be much better. The road through the wild card. I'll say this: if you're a battle tested team. That's why these teams that are fighting to get into the playoffs, like the San Franciscos last year, the Green Bays this year, the Detroits this year, Jacksonville, Jacksonville has played a playoff game every week since Thanksgiving. Every week they've played a playoff game since Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so now they win this weekend, they get a home game, and okay, you're playing the 5 seed, in that game. But you get a home game, you win that, you're battle tested. I think there's a lot to that. I think there's a lot that the struggle is real for a lot of teams. And it really, really, yeah, we all look at the Green Bay game and the Cowboys go up there to lose. And then what happens the following Thursday? Green Bay just gets smashed by the Titans. And you're like, well, there goes Green Bay, back to being Green Bay. They're done. Well, look at him now. That's a team you don't want to play, but that's the playoffs.
Next question here from Jake. Brian, as somebody who I know we talked a little bit about the Commanders yesterday. This is a game coming up, obviously, that means a little to them, but factoring in Sam Howell and the offensive line that Washington has, over under 3.5 sacks against Washington this weekend.
We go under.
Under. Why is that? You think they're going to get the ball out quickly?
I don't think. Yeah.
Howell's elusiveness. Howell's not got. When I watched Howell on tape in North Carolina, I didn't think he had terrible pocket presence. And I mean,
not at all.
Athletic,
no, he will run. He is one of the toughest quarterbacks I evaluated in that draft. I love the player. My guys on the G-Bag Nation were giving me crap about Brock Purdy 5 weeks ago, and I'm like, I'm telling you, Brock Purdy can play. I might be getting the hang of this quarterback thing. I think they stole Howell in the 5th round myself. I've heard stories out at the Star that Dallas liked him in the 4th round. They were considered drafting him in it, but it didn't work out for him the way they wanted to kind of get the guy. So to me, I think that I don't think there's going to be more than 3.5 sacks. Could be way wrong about that. They've got some problems at guard and at tackle with one of those spots, with what they've got going on with Turner and those guys. So to me, sure, if they make mistakes, I see the ball getting out quick. I see the screen game for them throwing the ball to the wide receivers and also throwing the ball to Robinson, the back, or Williams. They've got a couple of backs that can catch the football. So to me, I think there's going to be, unless they could get that kid to hold the ball and he doesn't want to make a mistake and you start just sacking him that way.
Yeah.
Well, if Carson Wentz was in there, I would go over. Seriously, I would go over. I'd go over on the sacks because I just don't think Carson Wentz has very much awareness. I think this kid has awareness.
That does it for us here on the Love of the Star. We got the Cowboys and the Commanders this weekend. And after that, we will be looking ahead to a playoff matchup. It will look like either they're going to finish as the 5 seed, which is the most likely scenario probably, which would mean heading to Tampa Bay to take on.
Does the PR department feel that way? What's the PR department think?
I don't know about any of that. That you may likely be heading over to Tampa Bay and playing that game and playing that one on the road, or if things fall into place, you could be the 2 seed, the NFC East champs, or maybe even as much as the number 1 seed and getting that bye. Either way, we'll have a lot for you guys coming up next week as we look ahead to the playoff run. Hopefully a long playoff run for the Dallas Cowboys. For Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby Belt. We will talk to you guys next week.